You're about to enter the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show. The Jake and Cliff Show is on, showing you how real estate investing can make your dreams, your future, your financial freedom, your reality. And now, your hosts, Jake and Cliff.
And we're back. Was there ever any doubt? This is Jake. This is the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show, and we are on the air. And I am here with an actual live real estate expert, unlike what a lot of people will tell you, but I know that he's an expert. He's really a great guy, and his name is Cliff Gager. Cliff, how you doing today?
Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be back. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. We are experiencing some weird weather across the nation, and we got snow last night, so it was a little hectic this morning getting things going. So not used to the cold, snowy weather, but it's definitely different and not unenjoyable.
It's different. It's different here in Southern California, isn't it? Because a lot of the people here, I lived on the East Coast. I lived in New York, and a lot of the people would flee, much like birds migrating to Florida for the winter. And they were commonly called snowbirds. Snowbirds, yeah. And that's real. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why I'm in California. There are several, but one of them is that by about the age of 21 in New York, I had lost any impression that I ever might have had that the snow and the cold and the wet was good for anything, and it wasn't good for me anyway. So
well.
I left California.
Sometimes I look at pictures on the internet, and there's one that's my favorite, and the person opens the door, their front door to their house, and the snow is so built up on the front door that it left the impression of the door when they opened it. Actually, it looks like the door is still there. It's just the impression of the snow. And the only thing that comes to my mind is that's God's way of telling you to move south.
Yeah, I agree. Well, anyway, for those of you who are listening to us, we hope that the weather is good wherever you are, and let's get on with the show. So, Cliff,
awesome.
What are we going to talk about today?
Well,
I have some ideas. You may have some ideas, but I'll let you. You're the expert. Tell me what we're going to talk about today.
Well, the show has been going fantastic. I'm really excited about the results, and I just wanted to thank everybody out there for your support and your listening. And we want to bring things to the general public that normally in this business you have to pay somebody a lot of money in order to get this information. So we're going to actively be sharing, different techniques, different strategies, different methods, little tips and tricks. And I know everybody says, "Oh, run away from the guy that says secrets." It's not a secret to us, the people that know that's what's going on, but it is a secret to somebody that doesn't know or lack of knowledge. So I kind of want to bring the things that I know, that I do, that I use, and that my students use, which not a lot of people know how to do. I call them secrets. A lot of people don't like that word for whatever reason, but is there a legal word, Jake, for something that's unknown?
Proprietary information.
There you go. So
and proprietary information. Now hold on.
Yeah.
Look, you know what my profession is. You know that I can't even say hello unless I have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So the idea with proprietary information, it's information that ought not to be disclosed, and if it were disclosed, it would constitute an impinging upon the viability of a person or a company or entity's business. And so you often get, and this is increasing, the use of these is increasing, and there's I don't want to get off on a tangent because you know me, I will, but there's an increasing use of these just with corporations and entities, business entities, performing this and having their employees sign this, and then their employees may be put in a position where they actually can't get work because the company can allege after the fact, after they leave their employment, that they violated the non-disclosure agreement, or the non-disclosure agreements are so sweeping that you basically can't bat an eye in a phone booth without violating the non-disclosure agreement. So they go hand in hand, but that's typically called proprietary information. It's considered to be confidential, and it is not to be disclosed, and that's the whole idea of a non-disclosure agreement.
So here's the
I'm pretty proud of that. I think I summed that up really quick.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, if you guys don't know yet, if you're new to the show, I've been a real estate investor for about 26 years now, and started back in the early 90s. And I also worked with seminar companies, teaching them and their students how to buy, fix, sell, wholesale, retail, rent, turn properties into rental properties. And when you do a lot of things a certain way after so much time, you learn the things that work and you learn the things that don't work. And one of the things that I've found in the seminar industry is I've been watching a lot of videos lately, and I see the same thing coming up over and over and over, Jake, and it's the person telling this sad story and this story about how they were down and out and woe is me and all of these things that just make it look cataclysmic. That's the Armageddon is happening in that person's life.
Personal Armageddon, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I know a lot of these guys, and I'm like, when did that happen? Not to say that it's not true, but I've never experienced a situation with some of the people that I've worked with to where
and let me say before you go on that this gets into a whole other concept that we will get into on the show at some point, maybe not today, about training that is a little squishy as far as some of the details are concerned.
Well, I mean,
that's all I'll say. I mean, some people would talk about it and they would call it fake training.
Yeah.
I would say, if I would say fake, I would put quotation marks around fake so that people understood that I was qualifying it. But this is the kind of thing that you see. You see these hard luck stories, and you have been in the business, and you look at these people and you think, gee, I never know that happened to that guy.
Right. And so where I'm going with this is everybody has a hard luck story. Life is hard. Life is difficult.
Hard. Amen.
And every time you think you're getting ahead, something will come up and something happens. And that's the same thing in real estate. When you start buying, fixing and selling, or wholesaling, or renting properties, it's going to be a situation comes up after another situation, after another, after another, after another. But after 20-something years, you realize that there's a pattern. You realize that there's a lot more good than bad. And I think a lot of people focus on the bad stuff, but there's a lot of good stuff too.
Well, when you say a pattern, what exactly do you mean by that? Do you mean that the way to wealth and financial independence and to achieve the results of your desires in your personal financial revolution are part of a pattern that can be followed, and that is not just something magic like winning the lottery that happens to a couple
absolutely.
People while everybody else languishes in the proverbial pit of despair?
Yeah. Well, it's like hitting the lottery. I always tell people it's luck. Okay, real estate investing is a lot of luck because it takes a lot of skill to be lucky. Okay, and when you put all of the right things together and the sun and the moon line up and the stars all line up, you're going to get a good deal. Now, how do you become lucky? Well, it's doing the skillful things that knowledge base will tell you, and the patterns will tell you that if you do these certain steps, you're going to be in that lucky spot. In other words, how do you know someone's going to sell a house $500, it's a $500,000 house. How do you know they're going to sell it for $250,000? You don't. And there's no signs on the front of the house that say, hey, we'll take 250. And there's got to be a method or a system or, scenario that you go through every single time to find those properties. And I'm talking about my honey badger method. And the honey badger, if you don't know who the honey badger is just a really tough critter. It's an animal. It's really tough, fights lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, and it's relentless. It never quits. It never gives up. If it wants honey, it's going to go right into the beehive and take the honey. And it's my method of putting offers in, and some of you may have heard this before, but it works. And when you go through the honey badger steps that I give you, it's a methodology that has worked for me for many, many, many years.
Well, of course, if I can interrupt you here for a minute, to kind of enlighten the audience from another way, what is the problem with submitting offers? Don't answer. Oh. I'm about to tell you. Yeah. They all look the same, and realtors have seen this all before.
Right.
They are unremarkable, by and large. And as such, they get put not in the round file or in the dustbin, but they get relegated and they are not seen. So the whole idea of the honey badger, and the thing that impressed me, Cliff, when I first heard about it, was that this is a method of submitting a purchase offer that gets seen, that gets the realtor's attention right away. And this is what you want. You
Yes.
don't want them not paying attention to your offer. You don't want them saying, oh, here's another plain vanilla offer like I've seen a million times. I'm going to put this one aside. You want them to look at your offer and go, wow.
Wow.
Here's the real thing.
Well,
it's
not even that. Yeah, it's not even that. It's again, coming from the seminar background for 18 years, I went to different cities all over the place, and we taught the same thing in the classroom. I never really got to teach the honey badger, but you put an offer in with an agent, and let's say you live in Southern California and they have a lot of seminars, and I bet you all the realtors know when the seminar classes come through, because they'll have 50, 60, 70 people putting in the exact same, same words, same numbers, same terms.
And I said plain vanilla, but that's
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if you're out there and you're trying that and you're not getting success, and you're putting offer in after offer, and realtors are saying, you just can't do this, you need to look at what we've got and how this works, because not a lot of people do this, because I've only been teaching it a short amount of time.
And this is one of the ways investors get stuck, right?
Yes.
And this is what we're talking about today. And this is a terrible thing to get stuck on.
It is.
Literally getting stuck right out of the gate.
It's the first thing that you encounter is failure in the way that you present your offers.
That's right.
And a lot of people spend a lot of money, Jake. A lot of money to learn how to fail. And I don't think it's a purposeful lesson that they're being taught, but you got to understand that when you go out and do the same thing that the 55 other people in the same room are going to be doing, and you're in a small limited area and you have a small limited of supply in the housing market, and you're all putting bids on the same properties and you're all doing the same bids, they get it. They get it. They look at your offer in a way that says immediately, oh, these guys went to one of those seminars, and they probably don't have any money, and look at this, they spelled words wrong on the contract, and they put things in there that don't even make any sense, because that changed 5 years ago. Why would they be putting this into the contract now? And they put it in the, what do you call it, the round file?
File, which is
file
the garbage bin. Yeah. Right.
So I came up with years ago this method of the way I put my offers in. It's very unorthodox. It's very unique. What happens is you get to a point where it's almost like you're hitting the donkey with a 2x4. It wakes them up, and they're like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And when you go through the whole step, all the steps of how that offer gets presented, it puts you in that lucky spot. Going back to luck, and I always tell people to close their eyes. If you're driving right now, don't close your eyes. But just imagine you see the person sitting on their couch in their small little house, and maybe it's a middle-aged man, and his wife has left, his family has left, he lost his job. He's that whole sad story that you hear from a lot of stages. And, all those things happen to almost most 50% divorce rate now, Jake?
Oh, it's funny you should say that, but honestly, back in 1970, it was 50%.
Yeah,
the divorce rate is relatively static.
Yeah.
It's between 50 or 60%, and it doesn't change. That's pretty
so
typical.
that sad story
the problems that create that, and I'm talking about financial problems, have been relatively static. I think that, honestly, if I were to engage in a bit of not idle conjecture, but educated conjecture, that the people in life here in the United States have been sold a kind of a bill of goods. And they grow up believing in that bill of goods, and when they go ahead and they try to implement it, and it doesn't work, there are problems. And this is what lead people to believe and hope and seek and cast about for some sort of solution.
And so the guy's sitting there in his bewilderment, sitting on the couch, no job, no money, the savings, he's got probably enough to make 2 or 3 more payments on the mortgage.
As Paul Simon said, why am I so soft in the middle when the rest of my life is so hard?
Hard. Exactly. And they're watching TV, and of course it's in the middle of the day, so they're probably watching what? Jerry Springer, right?
Right.
So the guy's sitting there, and now he's getting some semblance of, gee, my life's not that bad as, the show. And then in the middle of the show comes a commercial saying, are you down on your luck? Has your wife left you? All these sad things. And the guy's sitting there on the edge of his chair, and they says, do you need to sell your house? And they call that person, and that person at that point in time is at their lowest, right? They're at their lowest point of their life, and they just want the pain to stop. Well, not everybody can run a, $2 million television ad campaign to try to buy their house. But what you can do is look for other signs that will tell you whether that person is in a position to let their house go. And that's what this is all about. Sometimes people will hold on to what you were saying, a false hope, thinking that, they can hit the lottery, I'll get a job right around the corner, and they just expend everything they have to try to hold it together, and then they get to that point where there's nothing left. And you've got a window of, it depends on what state you're in and how fast that process goes through, but you've got months, and they know they've got months, they've got months. The agents, the real estate agents know they've got months. So in a situation like that, I don't want it to sound like, oh my God, we're vultures and we're waiting for the prey to just dwindle away. But that house is going to go to an investor. That house is going to go to the bank. It's going to go in the system. And that's where we work. We work within the system. So I don't like to go to people's houses when they're in that mode and in that position. I did it years and years ago. I found a better way. And it's the way my Honey Badger works. I work through the MLS system. The realtors, when they publish the listing, they may or may not understand the lucky zone that's coming, because they're not connected to the person, the seller, the actual seller. So when you have a situation like on a short sale, when you have a situation where the agent is just a business person going out there trying to do more business, do more business, do more business, they may or may not be emotionally connected with the house the way the seller is. And the seller may be at that, I call it the Jerry Springer moment, where they just say, you know what, I'm done. Let's do this. Let's get this over with. But the problem is the real estate agent has the house priced at full market value. They have the listing does not appeal to, they're just doing the standard real estate agent stuff, which is it's a lovely house, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, needs TLC, and then we walk in the house and it's got, garbage up to your knees and the roof has holes in it. So what happens is you have to be able to put an offer in, again, like you were saying, avoiding the vanilla that grabs everybody's attention and gets people talking. And it doesn't necessarily mean that every time I put an offer in, I'm going to get a deal. But every time I put an offer in, I'm going to get conversation. I'm going to get interaction instead of being thrown on the floor or thrown in the file.
The thing about the honey badger is it's designed for that. It's designed for several things, but one of the things it's designed for the realtors to stand up and take notice.
Yeah, and they do, and sometimes it's exciting to catch somebody off guard that doesn't understand how this offer system works, and to see how it actually goes through the cycles. And it's step by step, Jake. You've seen me talk about this, and you've seen me teach this, and you've seen my students actually do this. When you do something, you know what they're going to do before they even do it, and it's fun and exciting. So go ahead.
And I like this part of it, and it sounds like Cliff and I are just talking amongst ourselves, but we're talking for the benefit of you, the listening audience, and we're just merely doing it in a colloquial way. But the thing that's important on this, and I can almost think, I want to say I can think of a myriad of things to tell you. Actually, it's only about 2 or 3. But what Cliff said is important as far as getting the realtor to stand up and take notice, because you can submit offers all day long until the cows come home. But if they don't get seen, what do they mean? They don't mean anything. So that's the idea. Number one is to get your offer noticed. Because as Cliff is so fond of saying, and it's really true, and this is one of the secrets that's so simple, when you actually hear it, you think, well, that really makes sense, is that nothing happens until an offer is submitted.
Correct.
And sometimes we have people calling us and saying, why can't we make the process go faster? We want the process to go faster. And Cliff will say, well, have you submitted an offer yet? And that kind of takes the student aback, and they say, well, no. And have you contacted a real? Well, no. And there are different, when I say realtor, I mean a buying agent.
Right.
As opposed to a selling agent. And that's something that's discussed in the 13 weeks to financial freedom that we market. But they haven't done that either. And so in other words, and this is the interesting thing, is they haven't taken the very first step.
Right.
The very first step that could get them on the road. They haven't done it, and it's so important. So what we're talking about here, and what I want to make clear, is that submitting the purchase offer and the ins and outs of how you do it,
is the first thing to do.
You are in control, because that's another way that the honey badger vests you with control. When you submit one of these offers that the realtor would just as soon throw in the round file, you're not in control. You're at the mercy of the realtor. But if you could submit an offer that put you in control right from the very beginning, wouldn't that be the better way to go? And that's what the honey badger does. That's what the honey badger system does all through the transaction. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Cliff.
Well, and if you're listening out there and you're thinking about getting in real estate, or you want to get into real estate, or you have already tried getting into real estate, and you may have tried some training, and you may have tried some there's very expensive training out there, and I always say the most expensive training is the training that doesn't work. And again, it's not hard when you go out there and you do the things that work. But when I hear people give me the sad story all the time, I got into this real estate thing and I spent all this money and none of it worked. And then I go to them and the first thing I ask them, and Jake is always there when he sees this, and says, the first thing I say is, how many offers did you put in? Well, we didn't put in any offers because all the real estate agents told us that you can't do that. And see, that's where I think of the honey badger, because the honey badger would say, I don't care how you do it. This is how I'm going to do it. It's my money. I want to buy a house. I want to do it this way. It's legal. It's absolutely a negotiation tactic that I use. And if you don't like that, is there another real estate agent in the office that wants to, put an offer in? And I think there's 600-700 million real estate agents out there, and just in Southern California, mostly
ex-Starbucks baristas. Yes,
but and you know what? I love real estate agents. I think a lot of them out there are really good at what they do, but I used to own a real estate office. I know how they're trained. I know what they're taught to do. And they're not taught to work with investors. They're not given bedside manners for a person that's sitting there watching Jerry Springer show. They're taught how to get listings, how to market properties, how to write the paperwork, and how to get it to closing. So if you look outside that box of realtors that are doing that, there's a lot of real estate agents and brokers out there that are just dying to do your business because they're like, there's got to be a different way. And there is. There's niches and everything. But going back to, all these different methodologies out there that I keep seeing. And it's funny, I've been in the business a long time, Jake, and I see, this strategy, and it's this same strategy that's brand new now that I remember seeing in an infomercial in the late 80s, or the
warmed over repackaged
stuff. And so when you've got a cycle in the system, real estate cycles, just like everything, the people in the business cycles, so you have new agents all the time. I like working with new agents that don't have what would you call it? I'm lost. Come on, give me a legal word there. A preconceived notion of how things are supposed to be. Because once you do that, you put yourself into a rut. And if you run into that real estate agent, or if you are that real estate agent that says, no, you can't do that way, don't just ask your broker, why can't I do it? You need to find out, because maybe your broker doesn't want you to do it that way because they want you to go over here and do the ABC stuff, which is supposed to make the real estate office.
So in other words, they may be complicit is what you're saying.
Well,
perhaps unintentionally, but this is like the, I remember back in the old days when I was doing law, and I learned, this was when I was studying law, and I learned that in courts, they have judicial officers. Attorneys are judicial officers. The judge is a judicial officer. And I read, and I could hardly believe my eyes, and it wasn't in Corpus Juris Secundum, but I think it was in Amjur. And these books, I'm sorry to throw all these names around, but these are the names of books that are compendiums of the law. They have all sorts of legal topics in them. And I was stunned to read that the judicial officers owe more of a duty to each other than they do to the client.
The clients.
And how would you like to go into court knowing that that was the case?
And that is the case.
And actually, when you see the way some cases are handled, it begins to make sense.
It does.
want to dwell on the legal profession, but I simply state that to make the point that it's this way in other professions too. And that's what I meant when I said complicity, either intentional or unintentional, or because this is simply not the way we do things.
Right.
I am not going to allow it to be done. Or I have to have a relationship with this other realtor, and I can't bring him a deal like this because it will offend him, and my own relationship, my own professional relationship with him will fall into a bad situation. And I'm telling you, folks, this stuff happens.
Every day.
This stuff is part of the mix, and it's not merely in law. It is definitely there in the real estate profession. And if you don't know it, and if you are not apprised of what the landscape is, you can get your own realtor saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't do things that way." Gosh, that's too bad. Okay, see ya, bye.
Next.
and you're sat there, and we're talking about, and we talked before the show, and we said, what are we going to talk about? Let's talk about the way investors get stuck. And this is one of the ways investors get stuck, because aren't we taught, and I go back to the old Paul Simon, the words to the song, the Kodachrome song, where he says, when I look back on all the nonsense I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. Yes. And that was really applicable to this situation, because what we're taught is that these are the experts, aren't we? They have certificates, they have licenses, they have degrees, and so these guys must know what's going on. Right. And you go ahead and you submit an offer, and they tell you it can't be done that way, or I'm not going to do it that way. What are you to do? What are you to say?
Well, Jake, it's really interesting that right directly on on most real estate contracts, it states one thing, and one thing that's adamantly important to everybody in the transaction, that the real estate agent, its brokers or affiliates, don't know if it needs a roof. They don't know if it needs plumbing repairs. They don't know if there's any title problems. They don't know if there's any legal problems. They don't know if there's, I mean, when you read the contract, I wish I had one in front of me right now. If you read the contract, it basically says that they're not responsible for any knowledge outside the job of what they're doing, which is being a real estate agent. And a lot of people have to understand that your real estate agent, unless they're a licensed contractor, don't know how to repair a house, okay? And it says that in the contract. They don't know what the value is. They don't, you have to hire an appraiser. If you want to know what it needs to be done for the repairs, you have to hire a contractor and get advice from them. And it's really important to understand that I started out very young and I didn't know. So when a real estate agent would say to me, "Hey, you can't do that," I was like, "Oh my God, I can't do that."
You did what everybody else does. You say, "Oh, they have the real estate license. They must know."
Right. And that one person didn't think you could do it, but it was something that you could do. So as I went through my career over the 26 years, I found that there's a lot of things that you can do, 100% legal. It's just how you negotiate. It's a negotiating strategy that really works, and that's my honey badger method.
Well, and one thing I found too in law, and I used to say to people, is that there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yes.
In law. There's more than one way to do something, and that's one of the creative aspects of law that I really enjoyed. That if you can't get something done one way, the law probably provides another avenue if you only know it, and
if you know it,
flexible and creative enough to see it to accomplish your goal.
Now that's the difference between a lawyer or an attorney, and now we're going to slam on attorneys, but I'm not really slamming on people. I'm just trying to make you aware.
No, we're not. We're talking about the limitations.
Yes.
And
of the individual
that are endemic to these professions, correct, not merely law.
Right.
I mean, every attorney understands that they call it the practice of law.
Yes.
And when you think about what that actually
medicine
means, it can give you pause, because it's
medicine
like,
too.
What, you mean you guys don't know how to get it right? You've got to practice.
Yeah,
and you're going to practice on me.
but that's true. And you know, when you have a legal situation, you want the most experienced attorney to help you because they've been there, done that, wrote the book, have the T-shirt. In fact, they made the T-shirt. That's the type of person you want, representing you. You don't want the guy that just got out of law school. He just graduated last month. That's somebody that you don't want representing you on a murder case.
That's right. And one of the reasons you don't want that is because that in college, in law school,
yeah.
they don't teach you how to practice law.
No.
Some law schools have what's called moot court, is where you can actually go in and you can get on a moot court team and can try a case and take you through the things. But it really doesn't teach you. It beats a poke in the eye. Moot court beats a poke in the eye. But it doesn't really teach you, and law school is not designed to teach you. And what I say about law school, I say for these other professions, how to practice the craft of law, how to practice the craft of real estate. What it's designed to do is teach you what a colleague of mine once said to me is black letter law. In other words, it's designed to teach you the law. It's not designed to teach you how to practice it. And in order to do that, you have to actually get out and practice. And if you just got out of law school, I had a district attorney that I was working with once. And once again, I want to say I'm not slamming attorneys because the legal profession is one that I come from and spent 30 years of my life in, and I loved it. It was great. I really liked it. But he made a comment to me. He said to me once, he said, when you get out of law school, really the only job that you're qualified to do is an appeals court judge.
Yeah.
Because you've been in the books, you know all the law, you've read it all, so you know what the cases are.
Yeah.
And the statement implicit in that, which he didn't say, but which I understood, was that you're not qualified to be a practicing attorney.
And and so
with real estate,
it takes many years to go through law school. It takes many years to go through to be a doctor, and it takes many weeks to go through becoming a real estate agent. Just because they're a real estate agent, just because they're a lawyer, just because they're a doctor, doesn't mean they have experience.
That's right. And you have members of the profession, and believe me, in law, I've encountered them. And once again, to all my colleagues out there, I apologize. I'm not slamming law. I'm talking about some of the realities that I discovered in the legal profession in my years in it that I am using and drawing upon because they are applicable to the real estate situation that we are talking about now, and which I would like to use and I would like the listeners to understand are very applicable to their situation as real estate investors. And the thing I was about to say is that these guys were the best guys. These guys were brilliant. These guys were smart. These guys made me, I used to think that I was pretty smart, and I still think that I'm pretty smart, but these guys were smart.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were so smart, and they were so sharp, and they were such good litigators. They were such good writers.
It's because of experience.
That's what part of made the profession fun. And once again, you real estate listeners out there, I apologize, but it made me in awe. I was in a situation where often I was in awe of my own colleagues because they were so good. But by the same token, you get guys, and I could tell stories about this, and they really didn't know one side from the other. They may have had a bar license. They may have been sitting up on a bench and wearing a black robe, but they didn't necessarily know. So what the conclusion is that you get all kinds.
But that happens everything. That happens.
Right.
If you're sitting there at your lunch break and you're working on a Saturday and you're getting ready to go back to work, people above you that you know 3, 4, 5 times more about the job than they do.
That's
and
right.
So what you have to understand is there are ways to overcome things. There are ways to overcome those situations. And what I found, the easiest method is using my honey badger method. If they don't move along into the system that I've created and I want to work in, then I find somebody else. It's really that simple. I have no obligation to work with an agent if I'm begging them to do the things that I want them to do. So just understand that if you get anything out of today, whether it's a real estate agent, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a doctor, they talk about it in medical field all the time to get a second opinion. And that's all I'm asking you to do. When you sit there and you think about all of the real estate investing training that you may or may have not taken, I know people that have books and books and books, and you know, I've got a lot of books on different real estate programs, and I've read them and I go through them just to, you know, see what's out there that's better than my stuff. And I found that a lot of it is regurgitated old stuff. I found that when you listen to it, you really, if you're a 35-year attorney and I'm a 2-year attorney, you can tell immediately that I just got out of law school. It's just
mostly because they're really young.
Right. Well, not only that, but you know. So the point I'm trying to make is when you go and you start reading some of these other methods that I see out there, I immediately know that they haven't done it, or they haven't done it a lot, or maybe they did 1 or 2 deals this way and then wrote a book on it. So you got to be careful about what you're trying to do. You got to make sure it works. And the only way to make sure it works is, are the students that read that book or the clients that took those training courses, are they doing it? Are they
and you know, this reminds me, Cliff, of not a webinar, but a real estate event that we went to last year to speak. And I won't say where it is because I don't want to give anything away.
Right.
But there was a young kid there.
Yeah.
Just like a lot of the young attorneys who just got their bar licenses that I used to see come into the law office when I worked in law offices. Typically, I just worked in my own consultancy practice. But he had and help me on this.
He had 5 transactions.
He had 5 transactions. He had flipped 5 houses, and he got up there and he basically represented himself that he was an expert. Now, I would leave it to the assemblage of listeners gathered here today, listening to an actual real live real estate expert, whether you would want to rely on someone who is pitching a training at a real estate event after only doing 5 flips, 5 deals.
But Jake, I see that all the time in this business. So just, you know, if you're maybe you're sitting in a hotel ballroom right now and you're getting the pitch for a $40,000 or $50,000 program.
That'd be great if we had listeners sitting in a ballroom right now. That'd just really be great. We'd be doing really good.
Because it happens every weekend, you know, and if you're sitting there, just take a minute, take a deep breath, understand that, you know, anybody that sells anything, Budweiser down to dog food, is going to hype their product. And just take a deep breath and think about it. Think about it. We're getting up close to the end of the show.
Oh, golly,
I know it goes so fast.
I know.
But just if you get anything out of today, I just want you to understand there is a good way to make this work. There is a way to take the stuff that you have learned, get a little bit more information to go out there and apply it. And 99% of the time when I talk to people and they tell me, oh yeah, that didn't work, or that guy's program didn't work and I couldn't get anything out of it, I first ask them how many offers did they put in, and it's usually less than a half a dozen, you know, maybe 5 or 6.
Doesn't it? Stops them cold.
And so my honey badger method teaches you how to overcome that and get beyond that. And the only way that if you're in an area that it takes 50 offers to get a smoking hot deal and you've only made 6, you have to put offers in.
So it's a numbers game, isn't it?
It is a numbers game. Just like I said in the beginning, it's that lucky spot. You have to present the right thing at the right place at the right time, and hopefully you get lucky. But if you put in 6 offers versus 100 offers, who's going to get more luck? You know, the person that won the lottery, you mentioned the lottery earlier, the person who mentioned the lottery said what? Oh, I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket. The person that didn't win the lottery didn't buy a lottery ticket. So you have to play. You have to engage. You have to put in multiple offers. You've got to find multiple people to put in multiple offers. And it reminds me of the 70s and the Clairol Herbal Essence shampoo. And they have this redheaded girl on there, and she's in the center of the screen, and then she says, and I wash my hair, and then I do this, and so on, and so on, and so on. And every time they said, and so on, they doubled her picture. So it was like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, until the whole screen was full of these little tiny pictures of her. And that is kind of like where I got the idea of, in order to put in multiple offers, you just have to duplicate it. So my honey badger method, it duplicates the process. It duplicates almost all the aspects of the offer system of how to put the offers in. And if you go out there and you put in multiple offers all the time, constantly, instead of analyzing a deal. I mean, why figure out how much it's going to be to repair it if you never buy it? You know what I mean? My deal calculator figures that all out in like what, 45 seconds, Jake?
Well, and the thing is that I think probably our listeners don't necessarily know that there is a way to do this before you even purchase the property. And this is actually kind of like magic when you think about it. I mean, I know we're running low on time, and I want you to talk about the 13 weeks, but it would be, it's like magic if you could have a calculator, which we do, that gives you all of this information before you spend dime one on the deal.
Yeah. Well, you know,
and we do.
The deal calculator is actually magic, and I forgot to tell you that I put a deal together with a voodoo doctor, and he put the no, I'm just kidding.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the 13 weeks.
My 13-week program, you're listening, I've been in the seminar industry for 15 years. I've been in the real estate business for 26 years. I've bought, fixed, sold houses. I've rented houses. I've wholesaled houses. And it's been more than 5, Jake. And the thing that I've learned over the years is I don't want to do the whole sad story, but I'll give you one tiny slice of the sad story, which made me really, really want to do this. About a year ago, I thought I was having a heart attack, and I thought I was going to die. Went to the hospital, spent $30,000 on tests and all that. Of course, the insurance pays the bill or whatever. But I'm sitting there, and when you have chest pains and your arms are radiating chest pains, and you look it up online and it says, rush to, call an ambulance, you start envisioning what your life is, was, and should or could be, or would have been. And what happened was, I'm okay. It was I had a motorcycle accident when I was young, and it was some nerve damage in my spine.
Right, that didn't even have anything to do with your heart, right?
Nothing with my heart, but when you're having the pains that describe a heart attack, you think you're having a heart attack. And when you write on the refrigerator the contact information for your son to call the 911 and all that stuff, these are things that are like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And what have I done? to make a long story short, your life flashes in front of your eyes and you have these epiphany moments and you realize that there's a lot of stuff in my brain through my experience in real estate that I haven't got out yet. And I haven't been able to get out yet. And I sat down and I put this program together and I actually made it a real thing. And I made these videos. And the videos take you from the very beginning to what to do when you make all this money, how to deal with the accountants and the taxes and the structure of the corporations that you need.
How to find money.
How to find money, how to work together with other people, how to work with real estate agents, how to do the honey badger method, how to, God, it's 26 videos.
A lot of stuff. It's 26 modules.
And that's why I call it, everybody's like, oh my God, I don't want to wait 13 weeks to make money. Well, it's not waiting 13 weeks to make money. I couldn't teach you all this stuff in a, 3-day weekend in a hotel somewhere.
That's
class.
Right.
So I put this all on video, and at first I sold it for like really big money, and I realized that the average person couldn't understand what this was that I was giving them. I was giving them a $40,000 seminar program on video. And the way that I deliver it, I've learned how to teach. I've learned what works and what doesn't work. So what I did was I created it in a way that makes it really easy to understand, number one, and implement, number two. And that's all that's important. Because if you understand something and you implement it, things are going to happen in the positive sense. So you watch these videos, you go through them, and it just happens. So Real Estate Expert Online, I've got a webinar. It's coming up. I want you to go to realestateexpertonline.com. Go sign up for this webinar. This webinar, it's changed people's lives. And I know that it's something that you can implement in your life and utilize and actually make it work. So it's a 13-week program. It's reasonably priced. You'll see that I'm not in this to become a private jet flyer guy, and brag about how cool I am and how many cars I have.
Like a lot of these gurus do, yes.
Well, and when you're sitting there in the hospital and you realize that you could die, you got to get this out. And that's what I did. I created the program to get this out. It's all of my experience. It's really, really cool. And just go watch the webinar. I'm going to go through and actually teach the honey badger method. So we are up against the clock. Man,
what's
Jake.
That URL again for the website?
It's realestateexpertonline.com.
Or you can call 1-800-396-1501 as well.
Correct.
And leave a message, and we'll be glad to give you that information.
Yes. So with the last minute, I want to thank you guys for being on the show today. We're going to take calls next week. So if you have any questions, give us a call. Jake, give us the 800 number again. 800-396-1501. That's 800-396-1501. And give us a call. Go to realestateexpertonline.com. And let's rock and roll this real estate experience in your life. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
See you next week.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show with Jake and Cliff. The real estate investing revolution has only just begun. Want more information on your own personal revolution? Go to realestateexpertonline.com or call 1-800-396-1501. The owners of the show, this station, or any of its affiliates want you to know that real estate investing is risky. You could lose your entire investment. Topics and opinions expressed in the show are for informational and entertainment purposes, not professional advice or even factual reporting. The owners disclaim any responsibility to supplement, correct, or modify the content of any broadcast. Nothing in this content shall be construed to create an agreement, waive this disclaimer, encourage evasion or disobedience to any law, or constitute a submission to jurisdiction in any state or country. persons or entities referred to are entirely fictional. No reference to an actual person or entity is intended, but is entirely coincidental.